Next chapter will be 2 Nephi chapter 23.
The burden of Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amos did see. Lift ye up a banner upon the high mountain, exalt the voice unto them, shake the hand, that they may go into the gates of the nobles. I have commanded my sanctified ones, I have also called my mighty ones, for mine anger is not upon them that rejoice in my highness.
Now, this chapter is going to be mentioning another country that we haven't really mentioned that much in these chapters, called Babylon, right? And it would be talking about some things that happened to that country, but in a lot of ways, it also does mean people in general, right? And, so some of the punishment and some of the things that they were found guilty of, people in general can be found guilty of. So as we go through some of these verses, we'll try to differentiate which ones are talking about Babylon specifically versus which ones talk about everybody. I'm going to show you some verses in another part of the scripture that coincide with this, right? That make it a more general chapter that we're going to be talking about, right? But in general, as you consider that Babylon was one of the powerhouses of the time. In fact, very early in the Book of Mormon, we were talking about how Lehi and his family were told to leave Jerusalem, and that not long after they left, Jerusalem was taken captive and carried away captive into Babylon. Right, so Babylon was one of the powerhouses of that time, and as tended to happen with those who were powerhouses, they became power hungry, and became prideful and so forth, and so that's something that God doesn't really go for. So there was a time when they were defeated, and they were defeated by people called the Medes and the Persians. Right, so there'll be some reference to them in this chapter. Right, but so in particular in verse 3, where it says, I've commanded my sanctified ones, and so forth, would typically be referring to probably those who were the Persians of the time. Somebody named Cyrus was supposed to be like the leader of the Persians, and was somebody used by God for this particular thing. Okay, so it's most likely referring to that. But at the same time, you could also say, well, if we're faced with sinful conditions around us today, and God was going to send people to battle that, who would he send? He would send somebody righteous, all right? So hopefully that would describe us, all right, as somebody righteous and able to be sent that way, right? So that I would see that also, like, so in 3 it says, I've commanded my sanctified ones. It says, I've also called my mighty ones, for my anger is not upon them that rejoice in my highness. See, so his anger is not upon somebody who's serving him, rejoicing in his highness is what they're, because that's somebody who he can use, somebody who he would send to do battle against evil and sinful conditions. Okay, so that's why I said that as we go through this chapter, I'll be showing you some of the verses apply to Babylon in particular, and like the Medes, the Persians, and so forth. But there's others that could really apply to both, apply to today's conditions as well, and even to future events.
The noise of the multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, the tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together, the Lord of hosts mustereth the hosts of the battle. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, yea, the Lord, and the weapons of his indignation, to destroy the whole land. Howl ye, for the day of the Lord is at hand, it shall come as a destruction from the Almighty.
As you read 4 to 6, it's now, see, again, it can refer to how people were brought from other countries to defeat Babylon, but really 4 to 6, now you're starting to see really future events, and it really is to be referring to the second coming of Christ, right? Because as you see in verse 6, it talks about the day of the Lord is at hand, which that's what the day of the Lord is. The day of the Lord is when Christ comes again, right? And so when it says in 4, it says that there'll be, where did it go? It says, noise of the multitudes like as a great people, noise of the kingdoms of nations, again, the Lord of hosts, which would be Christ, mustereth the hosts of the battle. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, right? Yea, the Lord and his weapons of indignation to destroy the whole land. So this is really the second coming of Christ that it's referring to. Okay, so you can see how that it applies to that, because when Christ comes the second time, he's not going to be a baby being born in a manger, right? But he'll come with the armies of heaven, and then strike down those who were evil, those who would fight against that cause. another time frame, it says there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city. See, so it's now comparing Babylon really to the sinful nations of the world. Right? See, it says that because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Right? So here in the book of Revelation, it's using Babylon as a type of those that would be in a sinful condition. That the angel is saying that's fallen now, right? It's in the time it's talking about. So I wanted just to bring that out to show you that there is some comparison between that Babylon of the time we're reading and the sinful nations of the world, right? And even the book of Revelation makes use of that. And I don't think the angel would care about one city really. So it's really more about a wider group of people, and then those who would be in a sinful condition and would then be those that Christ would be fighting against when he comes for the second time on the day of the Lord.
Therefore shall all hands be faint, every man's heart shall melt, and they shall be afraid. Pangs and sorrow shall take hold of them. They shall be amazed one at another. Their faces shall be as flames. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, cruel both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it.
Case is further description of what happens on the day of the Lord when Christ comes again, right? Since you can see, it's all hands be faint, every man's heart shall melt, will be afraid, and so forth. And then 9, behold, the day of the Lord cometh, cruel both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate and destroy the sinners thereof out of it. Right? So I mean, there's only one objective when that battle occurs, which is to destroy the sinners. So again, it's at that point, time is up. See, right now, the Lord's hand is outstretched to everybody. Okay, everybody has the opportunity to come to the Lord today, and that will continue for some period of time. But when Christ comes again, then time is up. And either you're on the Lord's side or you're not. And if you're not, then it's I'll say no more Mr. Nice Guy, right? At that point, it's just to destroy the sinners and to claim the righteous.
For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in her going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. And I will punish the world for evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and will lay down the haughtiness of the terrible. I will make a man more precious than fine gold, even a man than the golden wedge of Ophir. Therefore I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place, in the wrath of the Lord of hosts, and in the day of his fierce anger.
Okay, so you're seeing more prophecy of future events that would occur at the time that we're talking about. And actually, what we're reading is also mentioned in the book of Revelation. This time, if you want to turn to chapter 6, this particular chapter is what's called the opening of the seals, right? But every time a seal is opened, some other catastrophe happens. And what it's talking about here, see, it says, in verse 12 says, there was a great earthquake, the sun became black as sackcloth, the moon became as blood. So these were things that John, who was the writer of Revelation, was seeing occur. And so he's recording that. It's like, whoa, the sun is black and the moon is like blood. And earthquakes and just a terrible thing happens when the seal was opened. Now, if you're paying attention here, is the verses we just read. Okay, so in verse 10 of what we just read, it says, for the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine, because it was like blood. And in 13 it says, I'll shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place, which to me would be an earthquake. All right, so here it's describing the same conditions in the same time frame that it's talking about in the book of Revelation. All right, so that's how you know the time frame that it's talking about here. All right, so that's, and then more the same, I'll punish the world for evil and the wicked for their iniquity and so forth. Right? And now in verse 12, it says, I will make a man more precious than fine gold, because a lot of people will be killed at that time, so so few people left that each would be more precious than gold. And since it would just be the righteous people that would be remaining, so they would be precious in that regard also. And when it says here, even a man than the golden wedge of Ophir, right, that... I actually wasn't familiar with the name Ophir, but it actually does appear in lots of places in the Old Testament, and it's a place, right? And it's a place that's known for having lots of gold. And in fact, King Solomon got gold from Ophir, and And there was several references to it. Almost everyone I found, the gold was in the same sentence with it, right? So that's what it was known for. It was known for a place of a lot of gold. So that's what it's comparing to. It's like, hey, it'll be more precious than even all the gold from Ophir, right?
And it shall be as the chaste roe, and as a sheep that no man taketh up, and they shall every man turn to his own people, and flee every one into his own land. Every one that is proud shall be thrust through, yea, and every one that is joined to the wicked shall fall by the sword. Their children also shall be dashed to pieces before their eyes, their houses shall be spoiled, and their wives ravished.
Okay, now as far as it says it shall be as the chaste roe, I looked for, kind of looked that up a little bit, and it was comparing that to like an animal, like a fast animal, like a gazelle, right, is what they compared it to. Because actually, when I was looking at roe was like fish eggs or something, so that didn't make sense to me when I was reading it the first time. But I compared it to a gazelle, and when you figure, a fast animal being chased, it's going to run pretty fast, right? And so, and what you're seeing is that when Christ is coming again, people they're going to be afraid, like Sister Radley was saying, right? They're going to be afraid, and so their first instinct is going to be run away. Right, run away as if you could really run away from God. You're going to try to escape and try to escape these things that we're reading about. Right, but of course there is no escape from it at that time. But that's going to be kind of the reaction. People are going to want to run away. Right. Now in 15, it's kind of talking about really the kind of people that we're talking about. It says everyone that is proud shall be thrust through. Right, so. That's one of the main things that we find is that there's a lot of pride in the world, a lot of pride of, we're somebody, okay? That's why we don't need God, because I can do it myself, all right? Or I'm capable of doing all this myself. I don't need a God, I don't need God's help. So the proud are the ones that are probably the most ripe for this thing that we're talking about. And perhaps what it's saying, though, is that everyone that is proud should be thrust through is, perhaps those who don't run away, right? That they're proud, that they're going to, as if they're going to stand and fight, right? Well, they're not going to be successful in trying to fight against God. Okay?
That also goes with the one difference between the two verses. In Isaiah, it doesn't say everyone that is proud; it says everyone that is found.
Ah, see,
so if you're still standing, if you're still there, they find you.
Okay. All right.
Perhaps because of your pride.
Yeah, exactly. Right, so those who would stand as if they're going to fight against the Lord, right? Well, it's not going to be successful. See, and unfortunately, those who fight in this way, I mean, their whole household is affected, right? As it says, even their children wind up dying, and their wives and so forth, because they represent their household, and so their whole household is affected by this. So it's a terrible time, as we've been saying, but it's only a terrible time for those who are not righteous.
Behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, which shall not regard silver and gold, nor shall they delight in it. Their bows shall also dash the young men to pieces, and they shall have no pity on the fruit of the womb. Their eyes shall not spare children.
I mean, to me, as I read this, it's not the way not the way I would write a chapter, okay? Right, because you're mixing things and going back and forth. See, now it's moving back towards the actual physical Babylon, right? Because now the Medes were the ones that were used to fight against the city Babylon. The Medes, by the way, usually you hear the Medes and the Persians, they kind of go together when they're referenced. And, right, the Medes are from Media, just south of Philadelphia here. Oh. And it was a Media, which is today is the northern part of Iran, right? So it's basically in the same general area of the Middle East there, right? So that was Media. So the Medes were from Media, and so the Medes and the Persians typically joined forces and did things like this. And so in fact they were the ones that actually overthrew Babylon in 539 BC. So in 17 it was a prophecy at this time, because Isaiah lived around 700 BC, so still almost 200 years before that was going to happen. But and in fact, really, Babylon taking captive of Jerusalem was still in the future at the time of this. So Babylon was still a superpower at that time. So Isaiah's words made any sense to people who were reading them or listening to them. They said, yeah, right, Babylon's going to be defeated. Yeah, right. All right, but yet that did happen. Like I said, about 200 years later. And so the Medes and the Persians were the ones used to do that. And the Medes were apparently not necessarily that taken with like silver and gold and stuff, so I guess they couldn't be bought. So they were just used for this purpose, and so they joined forces with the Persians to defeat Babylon. Okay, so 1718, like I said, is describing a physical captivity or physical battle that took place. So even though we're comparing Babylon to being the sinful areas of the world, the sinful people of the world, yet so we're kind of mixing in real history versus still things out in the future.
And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency, shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall the shepherds make their fold there. But the wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of doleful creatures. And owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there. And the wild beasts of the islands shall cry in their desolate houses, and dragons in their pleasant palaces. And her time is near to come, and her day shall not be prolonged. For I will destroy her speedily, yea, for I will be merciful unto my people. But the wicked shall perish.
I mean, I think these verses can apply to either, right? Because when Babylon was defeated, I mean, it was basically destroyed and not inhabited anymore after that. So that part would apply to that. But certainly when the day of the Lord comes and then all the unrighteous are dealt with, right? That there's going to be large areas of the earth that are not going to be used for a while. So it can apply to either, right? But notice in 19 it compares Babylon to what would happen to Sodom and Gomorrah, right? As you remember, Sodom and Gomorrah were fire was rained down from heaven and destroyed it completely. So obviously it was uninhabitable because there was nothing left after God was done with it. And so this is what it's comparing it to, right? And you see in 20, it shall never be inhabited, neither dwells in generation to generation, right? Not even tents there and so forth. So it'd be totally uninhabitable because if God's going to destroy it, then it becomes unusable after that. Right? But like I said, I think as you read these, I mean, you can see inferences to what would happen in the future as well, to when the second coming of Christ comes, and when that's all done, you'll have a new heaven and a new earth, right? Because the New Jerusalem descends onto the earth, and then you have a place where people can live forever. But first, this destruction has to occur.